Hi, friends. I'm Emily Lay, and you're listening to the Simplified podcast. If you're looking for a quiet place where you can filter out the noise and the hustle, this is it. Every week, I invite you to slow down and join me to explore practical ways to organize and automate the complicated parts of life so you can focus on what truly matters most. Do you have a favorite comfort watch TV show? Like something you put on when you need the stress to melt away for a bit? Well, I found your next comfort listen, Girl Meets Farm, a podcast from Food Network that you guys are going to love. Girl Meets Farm is hosted by Molly Ye. She is a city girl married to a fifth-generation beet farmer, and she lives on the border between Minnesota and North Dakota. Girl Meets Farm is direct audio from the TV show, and y'all, this show is so sweet and fun. I love sitting at Molly's counter while you hear her mix, chop, and saute all the delicious food in her kitchen. This is a good one, y'all. Listen to Girl Meets Farm on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Well, guys, here we are. We have got a really important topic that we're talking about today, and I am so excited you guys are here. We're going to talk about how to help your kid navigate the tricky waters of puberty. Well, here we go. P.S. Parents, if you have little ones listening nearby, now might be the time to pop in your headphones if you don't feel like navigating a few more questions than you banked on today. I know we all bring different experiences to this topic. Some of us were introduced to puberty by our parents bit by bit, with little conversations along the way while we were growing up. For a lot of us, it wasn't something that was talked about until, you had the talk and your parents brought out a book and it all felt really weird and cringy, and then you never really talked about it again. Ugh, I get it. No matter where you're coming from, I get your anxiety around this because above all, more than anything, you just want to do right by your kids. I've been thinking a lot about this lately because my oldest turned 11 this year. I love this kid. Brady is kind and smart and curious and thoughtful. I could go on and on. Lately, though, I have seen little flecks of adolescence show up in his personality. A little more independence, a few more moods. Bigger changes are coming. Brian and I have always known this time would come for each of our kids, and we've always wanted to equip them with the knowledge and confidence to know what's going on with them, and that what's going on in their bodies is completely normal. We want them to feel safe in their bodies and in their environments. We want them to know how to protect their privacy. And above all, we want them to know that they can come to us to talk about absolutely anything, that we, their parents, are a no-judgment zone. We lead with curiosity, and we are a safe harbor where they can land with any questions they have. That is what I love about my friends Megan and Mary Flo from Birds and Bees. They lead with curiosity too. Megan and Mary Flo were our very first podcast guests all the way back in episode 2. If you've not heard that episode, you have to go back and check it out. We talked about how to talk to your kids about sex, and they had some really insightful things to say. Also, you'll want to go back just to hear my audio because I was a baby podcaster who recorded that entire episode with my mic backward. Not a big deal. Anyway, I digress. Megan and Mary Flo are some of the best teachers I know, so I wanted to have them on the show today to talk about how to talk to our kids about puberty and their changing bodies. This is a conversation for parents of older kids and little kids. One of the things I like about Megan and Mary Flo is how they equip parents to start talking about these things from an early age so that kids don't feel like they're getting a tsunami of new and overwhelming information when they start to notice changes in their bodies. Megan and Mary Flo teach parents how to help kids learn about sex and puberty drip by drip with small age-appropriate conversations sprinkled throughout normal life. There is no shame, no secrecy, because why would there be? Human bodies are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Our conversation today is framed around talking to kids about the changes happening to their bodies and how parents can start talking about this not just when kids are seeing those changes take place, but how to start talking about bodies even when kids are little. Honestly, there's so much we could have talked about here that this could have been the longest episode ever. We could have talked for a week. If you guys want, maybe we'll do a part 2 on this topic. If you would like that, please leave me a comment on today's Instagram post over at Emily Lay. All right, enough intro. Let's get to it. Here is my conversation with Megan and Mary Flo of Birds and Bees. Hi, guys. How are y'all?
We are good. How are you?
Hi. Good. Hi. I'm so glad to have you guys back on the podcast because the episode that we recorded, which was, I think, the second episode we ever did, where we talked about how to have the sex talk with children, is one of our most listened to episodes of the Simplified podcast. And it was
Wow.
so helpful. So thank you guys for doing that and for coming back on, because today we are going to talk about puberty, everyone's second favorite topic.
It only gets better, right? It's
It
just
only gets better. And for anyone that is listening or watching, you have to go follow these lovely ladies over on Instagram, because I have learned so much from you guys, and I feel like you have really empowered me as a mom to have important conversations from very early on, appropriately with my kids, and it's just been like really, really helpful to me. So thank you for all you guys do.
well, thank
Welcome.
you.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, okay, since we last talked, my oldest, Brady, has turned 11. 11. I don't even know how that happened. Like I tell him all the time, like, you're still 4 with curls on the back of your head. I don't know how I know you think you're 11, but you're always going to be 4. But when I was a kid, 11 was the age where things started to kind of change, and physically and also like in our brains. And certainly the adults in our lives were starting to talk to us about what we could expect to happen in our bodies over the next couple of years. So this particular topic is something that I have really been thinking about for a while, like as we have approached this age. But backing up, let's say that I am a parent of little bitties. So maybe like 2, 3, 4 years old, and they're starting to ask questions about their parts. What's this, Mom? What do we do? Like, what do you say to those parents of little ones that are asking about private parts? Like, what is this? You know, why does this look different than that? This is the mom of twins, by the way. We've had those.
Yeah.
What do you say to the mom of little ones who's asking those questions?
Well, I think what we encourage parents with all of these conversations, puberty, sex, everything, is to start as young as you can, because it's actually so much easier if you start young. And so for body parts, it's a really not easy. I don't want to simplify things for those that might struggle with these words, but it's the best place to start with these conversations. And we emphatically encourage parents to use anatomically correct words. So penis and vagina should not be bad words in your home.
Right. Amen.
We want you guys to use those as often enough as you can, where your kids don't have any sort of pause if those words come out of your mouth or your husband's mouth. And so when they're, Mommy, what's that? Oh, that's your penis. You know, boys have a penis. What's that? How come, sister, oh, she doesn't have a penis. She has a vagina. These are your private parts. That's why we covered them up. And so we want to use these words frequently and in a tone that's very matter of fact. We don't need to be over, in either way. We want to be super shameful with body parts, and we also don't want to be super silly with body parts. And so a lot of times parents will have, just based on their own upbringing, wingy-wangy words. I like to call for these body parts. And if this is like a radio show, we can have people phone in and tell us their silly, willy words they use for body parts. But we have heard lots of them over the years.
Yes, I can't believe it.
But that kind of shows our child that everything else has a word for their body parts, head, shoulders, knees and toes, elbows, knuckles, all those words. But then these have silly words, because these are silly parts. And that's not helpful. And then at the same time, we don't want to discourage those body parts by being bad or shameful. Like, don't say that word.
Right.
Or don't say penis in front of your dad, or
Where did
whatever.
you hear that?
Yeah,
right.
we don't. So we want to use these words often enough. So like what you were saying with little kids, parents of little, start using those words, in the bathtub. That's your penis. That's a private part. Nobody else should touch that.
This was a new idea for me. Like, I was raised with like the funny words, and I'll never forget. I have a friend who used to work in a school office, and she said she would have kids come in and be like, "My wingy wangy hurts," and she's like, "I'm sorry, what's a wingy wangy?" And that's so important, especially if children are telling you very important things you need to know, that they are using the proper words, and that those words they're just anatomical. It's just like you guys said. And I think that's something I've taken from what you've taught me, is just be very matter of fact,
And also it's really their greatest protection to know those words.
Yes.
So it's the right thing to do. It's just that we're not used to it, but that is we're just one generation away from it being totally normal to talk about these things in a very matter of fact tone. Yeah. But when we were growing up, nobody ever said those words ever. I would blush to read them. So it was kind of, there were so many layers of doubt about using those words. Yeah. And I feel like now we can confidently tell parents, your children are not going to be weird for knowing them, saying them, and knowing what they are. Being in the South, we also sometimes tell parents, you don't just because they're familiar with them doesn't mean you have to use them only.
Right.
Like you can still say, in a public bathroom or in, the grocery store, your privates, you can still use that just like you would say my face, but not always identifying every part of your face. So it's like a region.
I love that. And I think being matter of fact about it makes it not weird. I mean, I love that on Instagram, you guys say to use your pediatrician voice. And that, I love that because it makes me feel more confident when I am talking to my own kids. So talk to us about that. What is the pediatrician voice?
It is. Go ahead.
So recently, and this is since I've had kids, my oldest is almost 9. Yeah. And so during one of her early well visits, the pediatrician came in the room, and I'm not sure exactly what year they implemented this, but fairly recent history. The pediatrician comes in the room and says, to my child, Dr. So-and-so is going to be looking at your vagina. I can only do this because your mommy's in the room.
Mine does the same thing.
Now you're nodding, and I'm sure hopefully every mom listening is nodding because that is the new protocol, and every pediatrician says that phrase in the room. And as adults in this situation, we know that is coming from an abuse protection point of view. Right. That's very heavy. Yep. But that heaviness is not conveyed to my young child in that room. Right. It's medical. Matter of fact, they move on. It's just another way to emphasize, because hopefully you're having these conversations at home as well. These are your privates. You are in charge. May I look? Your mom is here. And so the pediatrician's tone is very medical and matter of fact. And that's what we say. Use your pediatrician voice just in the same way that the doctor was talking about something that's pretty heavy. Yeah. She didn't put in a heavy way.
Right. Right.
And it's another voice of authority. Yes. And it's an authoritative voice without being a heavy authoritative voice.
Absolutely.
And so I think that helps to put you as a loving authority in their life, just like their pediatrician. So you're saying in a way that's almost reassuring, but clearly stated and medical. So that's what we mean by the pediatrician voice.
I love that. I have had conversations with my kids often, as you say, and Brian and I are very we want our kids to, and I learned this from you guys, they're little sponges. We want to fill the sponge before someone else fills it. And so we're very open with our kids and very matter of fact. And I feel like when you're conveying things like that, not making a ginormous, oh my goodness, we're going to have the talk. We're going to, we're going to talk about how your body's changing or whatever. When we're saying this is what's going to happen. This is how, XYZ. To me, it's a voice of confidence that they can believe and trust. And it builds that trust with them where they say, okay, I'll stick that in my pocket. That's good information to know. And then they move on. Do you ever get stuck in a dinner rut? We do, because I don't have time to get creative in the kitchen, so we end up eating the same things over and over again. But thankfully, I never have that problem when I put Green Chef in the rotation. You guys know I love Green Chef, and they've just gotten even better, because now you can choose from all 24 recipes they offer each week, and you can even mix the kinds of meals you get. That means you could eat a keto meal one day and a vegan meal the next. And if one of your family members needs a gluten-free meal, you can get that too, all in the same box. Every single member of the Lay family loves Green Chef, including my 7-year-old twins. Every meal has been a winner, but we have loved the feta cheeseburgers, the sweet potato tacos, and definitely the salmon with a roasted red pepper cream sauce and cauliflower rice. Yum, yum, yum. So get unstuck from your dinner rut. Go to greenchef.com/simplified135 and use code simplified135 to get $135 off across 5 boxes, and your first box ships free. One more time, go to greenchef.com/simplified135 and get $135 off across 5 boxes, plus free shipping on your first box with code simplified135. Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. And now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. How often do you check in with your mind to make sure you're doing okay? When it's summer and I have a little more time on my hands, I make sure to take breaks to go on a walk or take a bath just to help my mind slow down. But when I'm in a busy season, I'm not as good about it, and I can feel it too. How we care for our minds affects how we experience life, so it's important to invest some time into keeping them healthy. An easy way to do that is through BetterHelp Online Therapy. Honestly, therapy has been one of the greatest gifts I've ever given to myself. Taking time to talk to a therapist about my life, the good things and the hard things, has helped me slow down and see things from a different perspective. Sometimes it's hard, but it's really rewarding. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat therapy sessions, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. My listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/simplified. That's betterhelp.com/simplified. So my twins are 7. Again, I cannot believe that. They're going into 2nd grade. We have used the drip method that we've learned from you guys about just planting little seeds one by one, starting as early as humanly possible about seeds and eggs and about their bodies changing. I mean, we recently explained to Brady about periods, and he is not going to have a period, but he will have friends who have periods. And I was raised in a home where my dad knew all about periods. My brother knew all about periods. It's just something that everyone should know that happens, and vice versa. And, you know, I think I learned from you guys, and I was asked when he was really little, like, what is that? What is a tampon? And I was like, it's a Band-Aid for mommies. We just move on. Oh, got it. And then recently had an opportunity come up where he and I were together, and I got to tell him, like, hey, by the way, girls in, around your age, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, are going to go through this, and here's what it is. And if you ever see a friend who might need you to hand them your jacket to wrap around their waist, or you see them get up and leave the room with a little bag in their hand, like, just don't ask questions. That's what it is.
And I think just to re-emphasize everything you just said, like how important that is to normalize these topics and normalize these parts, and particularly normalizing periods. That's something, as we are kind of stepping into puberty world, or puberty conversations, just like how important that is for our daughters and our sons to know, like, we should normalize periods because periods are normal, like
periods are normal and they happen.
It's a sign of health. It's a good thing to have periods. And we don't have to think they're beautiful and amazing. And, you think they're kind of weird. Sure. But that's okay. This is what a healthy body does. And just the conversations you're speaking into your 11-year-old boy can just change. And this is something we say a lot, but it can change middle school, can change marriages.
I agree. Absolutely.
Just to have that understanding of not like, ooh, what is that? Ooh.
Right.
You're like, oh,
I'm not supposed to know.
Yeah. Girls have periods.
Matter of fact, and this is what, and I remember when I was having this conversation with him, there was something in me that wanted to, like, sit him down and be like, okay, let's talk. And I don't know why. I think it was just because I knew, like, I was imparting knowledge onto him that he did not have. And it was important. And I tried really hard to not do that. I tried to be like, this is what happens, X, Y, Z. And then by the way, what do you want to have for breakfast? Like, let's go. Do you have any questions? Yeah. Okay, let's go eat breakfast. And I tried to, like, have the conversation, be matter of fact, ask if he had any questions, and move on. And it made it less awkward for him. Like, okay, I'll tuck that in my pocket. And that was important to me because my grandmother, she had 4 boys and 1 girl. And she found it very important for her boys to understand women's bodies and what
for her. Amazing.
And so my dad knew more about periods than most girls his age when he was younger. And he tells me stories about how he was like, oh, I was the one to get up and give a jacket. Or I was the one to be like, let me escort you where you need to go, or whatever. Like, he just had a very matter of fact, like, I don't want to say empathy, but empathy for that. Like, I know what this is, and I'm here to help if you need a jacket. Or not, point out awkward things. So I think that that's so important. And I love that you are sharing the importance of mothers of boys explaining that whole situation as well. So kids are naturally curious about what is happening in their bodies and what's happening in bodies that don't look like theirs. So when do you think it's appropriate to have these conversations about the opposite sex? Do you think this is something that there's an age that you're like, okay, now's the time, you need to know about what's happening to others? And how, we've talked about how I had those conversations with Brady, but do you have any tips for mothers of boys who haven't had that conversation, or mothers of girls who, like, maybe you want to explain what's going to happen to boys?
Well, first of all, I think we are hesitant ever to give like an age
Yeah.
because that means that you pick an age, you do it, and it may not be the right time.
Right.
And so it's more of this is a season. And like you were telling Brady, this may have already happened to some of your friends who are girls, or maybe it hasn't happened yet. Like it's going to be a range of ages that this is happening. So I think for kids, it's better to get them on the early end so that they can know this isn't happening to you just yet, but we're getting pretty close. And so it may have already happened with some of your friends. And I think one of the things that's helpful to do is, as you're explaining tampons and pads and all those things to your daughter, is to make a little basket in her bathroom. So if you ever have a friend over and they start their period, here's where everything is. Just
I love that.
have a little something so it's not a crisis.
Yeah.
You run to CVS and it's like, I've got it all right here. You're not starting your period right now, but it's here, and here's how it all looks. Here's how it all works. And it's here too for, if you have a friend over and they need that. So let them be also empathetic with their own friends, but letting them know their bodies change, their voices change, their heights change, their body odor. There are two really good books out there. The Care and Keeping of You is for girls.
You find that one.
Girl Doll series, and there's several versions of it. And also guy stuff.
Yes, we have that one too.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a great resource.
I just think it's almost good to let them read it. Here's the girl version. There's no secret. These are things that girls change, how they change. These are some of the things boys think about. And this is what's happening to their bodies. You can just trade books.
And I think it's really helpful, just as kind of you had said earlier about empathy, how important I think empathy is in these puberty conversations, to kind of cast this idea to our young kids that this is kind of a weird time for everybody. Some people are going to go through this really early. Some people are going to go through this really late. Some people are going to feel really uncomfortable with the changes their bodies are having. This is just kind of a hard time. And you're going to feel like that too at sometimes. So let's just be really empathetic or really cautious with our words or the things we talk about. A good rule of thumb, I remember when I was teaching, we made this rule in the classroom of you don't say anything about anybody's bodies.
Yep.
Even if you're trying to be nice.
Yep.
Because my gosh, you're so tall, because you really wish you were tall. Well, they might be the tallest kid in the room thinking, oh, I don't want to be tall. So we don't talk about people's bodies because that could be a really sensitive issue for them. But just with boys and girls, to just let them know, obviously talking with periods and girls and all the fun hormonal changes or breast changes, body changes, hair changes. I mean, there's so many fun things we can dive into, but this is what's going to happen to a girl. And then this is what's going to happen to a boy. Boys have this whole voice thing that's going to make them really uncomfortable. And guess what? You can't not talk for 3 years. Right. So this is going to make some uncomfortable situations. Be kind about that.
I love that message. I will never forget. I was in 4th grade when I started wearing a bra, and I developed earlier, and I was mortified. I remember getting in so much trouble because my mom was a teacher at my school, and we would get to school and she would be like, Emily, why are you not wearing a bra? And I would be like, I hate it, Mom. Everyone knows it's there. Everyone sees it. I just know everyone can tell. They can see the outline of it. They just know it's there. I'm not ever wearing, that didn't last long. But I just remember being mortified of it. And for whatever reason, I felt like everyone knew and no one else had one, which wasn't true. But I was very self-conscious. And so I think that's so important to teach that, we just don't comment on bodies or those kinds of things. Well, on a related note, let's talk about boundaries. I think this is such an important conversation. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do we communicate to kids, young kids and older kids, that their private parts are private without freaking them out completely? My kids are doing things at this age, like going to sleepovers, and they're going off to camp and things like that. But how do we make sure that they know how to keep their private parts private, and that they can, on a separate note, that they can come to us with anything? I think that that's really important to communicate to our kids as well.
I think this is just another example of repetition, just talking about periods, about body parts, about good touch, bad touch. You might have that conversation for the first time. That is not your last time to talk about it. These should be things you say over and over again. The specific incidents I remember in my house is that obviously I'm speaking about body parts a lot. in our home. That is trying to put my money where my mouth is. That's what we're doing. Boys, put your underwear on if you're going to wrestle. We don't ever touch somebody else's penis.
Yep.
Just over and over and over again. I feel like I say this all the time. And then I've started kind of using those phrases more if we're like around other people, like we're, a social family. So we're going over to someone's house for dinner and the grown-ups are eating pizza and the kids are all upstairs playing in the playroom. So I'll kind of say, okay, guys, either to my kids or to all the kids, but just say, hey, remember the rules. We're going to keep the lights on. Don't take your clothes off. Private parts are private. Don't change the movie. I mean, just kind of lump it all in with all the other
and keep going. I love
keep
that.
going.
Yeah.
If anything happens, y'all come and tell me. But I think what you're doing right there is just taking out all gray area. Kids, black and white boundaries, and we are really big on setting clear boundaries. And one time, a couple months ago, I had just done a post about that or something on Instagram. And that night we were going to a friend's house and dear friends, we go over there all the time. And I just felt a little conviction of I just told everybody on Instagram to do this. And I should do this. And so I was just I literally was in the car and kind of okay, guys, we're going to the so-and-so's house. Remember, private parts are private. We don't let anybody touch our private parts. If anything like that happens and people are being silly, just come and tell me.
Yeah.
And kind of my tone is matter of fact. And I'm also fully aware and acknowledging that kids can be silly about body parts.
Yep.
That's appropriate. Okay. Mm-hmm. So just come and tell me. Okay. Bye. Enjoy your pizza.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, an hour or so later, I'm sitting down with all the adults having a great time visiting with my friends. And one of my children comes up to me and Mom, I need to talk to you. I was okay. So I go listen. And one of the little girls had been pulling his pants down over and over.
Right.
And this is a great example because thank the Lord, it was nothing heavy. It was not abusive. But what it was just excellent practice of we had set these clear boundaries. This 3-year-old girl was chasing the 7-year-old boy and kept pulling his pants down. That's fairly age appropriate for a 3-year-old. So I wasn't mad at the child, but I was really proud of my child to say, I'm so glad you came and told me because you're right. That's not appropriate. And so what it is, it just also gives me confidence as a mom to be okay, he knows when a line's crossed and knows what to do. Mm-hmm. And to your point, our kids are going to go to camp or spend the night or school or practices. I mean, they're going to be out of our little hands eventually. And so we want to give them kind of that internal filter and that internal gauge to say, hey, that's not okay. I'm going to tell an adult. And those conversations can't happen just once.
Yeah. And they're little by little and matter of fact and repetitive. I haven't told you about this story, but it just warmed my heart so much. My husband was out of town and my oldest asked if he could sleep with me. And I was like, absolutely, come get in bed. So he comes and gets in with me and he always sleeps with just pajama pants, but he had a shirt on and he goes to take his shirt off and he goes, Mom, is it okay if I take my shirt off? And I was like, huh? I don't care what you do. And I said, why? And he goes, I just wanted to make sure that was okay with you, that I'm going to take my shirt off. I'm going to sleep this way with my shirt off. And I was like, why in the world did you ask me that? And he said, Mom, you always asked if you could post my picture. And I just appreciate that you asked me that. So I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable. And I was like, we're teaching our kids consent. I mean, they're
picking it up.
That's right.
It was one of those mom moments where I was like, we're doing something right.
Right. They're listening. They heard that.
They hear it and they understand it. It made me happy. When it's summer, it's so much easier to knock out those rainy day tasks like updating our family budget. I logged into Truebill to see if I could trim subscriptions we don't need anymore. Turns out I had a bunch I hadn't used in a while, and Truebill helped me put $50 a month back into my pocket and straight into our summer vacation fund. Truebill is a free, easy-to-use app that helps you discover subscriptions you're paying for and cancels them with just one click. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. On top of that, Truebill can give you a quick breakdown of your finances so you can see where your money is going and how to tweak your spending habits. It's become one of my favorite budgeting tools. Do you know how many subscriptions I signed up for when the pandemic started? Now that things have opened up a bit, Truebill reminded me, hey, you don't need that online fitness class membership anymore. Oh, remember your grocery delivery app? You haven't used that in a bit. Maybe you don't need it right now. And I canceled them with one easy click. Seriously, you guys, stop subscriptions you don't need and use that cash for things you do. Join more than 2 million Truebill members taking back financial control at truebill.com/simplified. Go to truebill.com/simplified right now. It could save you hundreds or even thousands of dollars a year. One more time, that's truebill.com/simplified.
Well, and you started that question with, you don't want to freak your kids out.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And I do think you can actually bring on, these are rather light ways to talk to your kids.
Yeah.
But I do, when they go off to spend the night camp, or when they are going to be out of your control for, a period of time,
Yeah.
Maybe a sleepover or something, to say, this will probably never happen to you.
Yep.
But it has happened to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want you to know is there are some people that don't see our bodies in a respectful way.
Mm.
And if anyone is ever wanting to see or touch or take a picture of your body, that's not appropriate. Let's identify who would be the person in charge.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, and who's the person in charge? Because sometimes they just need the details.
Mm-hmm.
They freak out if that were to happen. First of all, I would start out by saying, this will probably never happen to you.
Yep.
I know of someone that it did happen to, and I'm not going to discuss that person with you, but they just didn't have a plan. And what they needed was a plan. And so I want to give you a plan. First of all, maybe have a code that if they're at someone's house and they can text you on their gizmo or whatever they have, that require anything other than just a code word. But this means come get me. And that would be a good thing. But also just what does it sound like to tell someone no?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? How loudly would you say it? And just give them a plan so that they can, once again, like you said, tuck that in their pocket. Because I think sometimes we think, yes, there are those silly moments of 3-year-olds, but then there are other moments that they need to know about.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you don't want to freak them out. And so you start with, this will probably never happen
to you.
I love
that.
how these conversations build. You start with my examples when you have little kids, ages 3 and 4, that's the clear boundaries. As you get closer to elementary, transferring over to middle school, then you have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So just reiterating that point over and over again, that you're going to have multiple conversations about body parts, about touch, about consent. These are not just a one-time, these all build.
And not keeping a secret. Like they will say, don't tell your mom, she'll kill you,
Right. No, yes.
Threatening tone. So we have no secrets. Surprises are great, but secrets that make you sad. Someone tells you something, don't tell your mother. That means exactly what you have to do is tell your mom. So
I love that. My parents always told me, you can come to us with anything. We will never be surprised. We may be disappointed, and there may be things we need to work on together, but you will never shock us. And so you can tell us anything. And there have been times in my life where I was a child or a young adult where I came to them with things that most children may not have, And I appreciated that openness with them, that they always said, like, you can absolutely come to me. What would you say if there's a parent who's listening who may have a child, dipping their toe in tweenhood or preteen, like puberty's coming, right? And they haven't really had any conversations with them whatsoever about the ways their bodies are going to change and, what that's going to look like. What would you say to them? Like if they weren't able to start that drip method, 5 years ago or whatever, and they needed to have a lot of conversations about a lot of things. What advice would you give them?
Well, I'll just jump in here. I would start out and own it a little bit.
Yeah.
And take the discomfort out of the situation by not blaming yourself or heaping too much, but just own it a little bit. Just like a few minutes ago, you said, I look at my 11-year-old and I still see curls in the back and little pudgy cheeks.
Yeah.
To say, somewhere along the way, you have really grown up. It's not that I've missed it, but it's just happened so quickly. And I have some catching up to do with some of the things that I feel like you need to know about and you need to hear about it from me. Right now, you may be thinking, I already know, Mom, but you don't know it from me.
Yep.
So could I, reboot a little bit on this topic? Or can we set some time apart so I can feel like in my own heart that I know I've caught up with you and where you are now and where this is all going? So,
and we would encourage parents too that have that sense of urgency of, oh my gosh, I'm so behind.
Yeah.
So if you feel that, our hope would not be that you would say, okay, well then this weekend we are going to catch up and I'm going to tell you everything.
That's terrifying.
That's terrifying. And that's the opposite of what we're trying to do. And so for parents that are sitting here listening, thinking, oh my goodness, I wish I would have started so long ago. sooner is better than later and later is better than never. And so we would say, give yourself kind of a leash of like, okay, from now until when school starts again in August, or from now until wherever, I'm going to start with this conversation and say, hey, listen, there's a lot that's going to be coming at you these next couple of years. And I really want you to hear my voice. And so on Tuesdays, when I drive you to dance, I'm going to share a little bit of information with you every time. And you're in the car and can't get out. So you have to stay.
Here we are.
Give it a little bit of a window. So it's not like a crash course over the weekend, because that isn't and overwhelming. So kind of say, you can catch up, but kind of at least give yourself several months and kind of map it out with your child. Hey, I feel a little behind in this, and I'm so sorry. Like Mary Flo said, kind of taking the blame a little bit. This may not be fun for you. I think it's important to be empathetic with that too. Is like, I know you don't want to be having these conversations with me, but I know so much more than your friends do. And it's really important that you hear from me. So once a week, we're going to walk around the block when it's completely dark outside and we don't have to look at each other, but I'm going to share a little bit once a week, or just kind of some sort of pattern, a long term. So it's not this, I feel so behind. Okay.
Here's a list of notes you need to know.
Exactly.
Right. I think that's so special and important, and it positions you in a way that, at least in my experience, now my kids come to me and they're like, what does this word mean? Or what, and I love that, because they could definitely go to their friends and ask and be filled with all kinds of information. But I love it that they come to me for that info, at least that I know of. Oh my gosh, you guys, I feel like we could talk about this forever and ever. You are such a wealth of information, and you break this stuff down for me in a way that is so simplified. It makes it so, it's not so overwhelming. And I think by doing that for mothers and fathers, you're helping us do that for our kids. So thank you times a million for all that you do. I would love for you to just share with everybody where they can find you. Your course, I have watched the whole thing. I absolutely love it. Tell everybody about that and where we can find you.
Our website is birds-bees.com, and that's where you can find the course. We also have a free guide you can get on the course, like 4 quick talking tips that kind of helps you get started. If you're thinking, who are these crazy ladies and what? You can try before you buy with our talking guide, and the online course is on our website. And you can follow us on Instagram. We are at birds_bees. And on Instagram, we share lots of little sound bites, talking tips, say this, not that. And we kind of dive into some bigger questions about puberty, periods, sleepovers. It's a kind of an engaging space. So
very engaging. People ask questions, and we've had some great conversations.
Yeah, it's fun.
Absolutely. I absolutely love following you guys. And you have a podcast, right?
We have a baby podcast.
I love it. I love a baby podcast.
We have a baby podcast. So our podcast you can find on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we just kind of do a deeper dive into a lot of the hot topics that we talk about. So what is out there is really good, and we're very proud of it. Have we made new episodes recently? No. Will we?
I understand that wholeheartedly.
Will. But what's out there is good.
We feel no pressure.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is really helpful information out there.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm so grateful. That was so fun. I could honestly talk to Megan and Mary Flo forever, because I think this conversation is so important. It is such an important thing to talk about with our kids. And it's so important to do it in a way that is not shameful, that is not embarrassing, that is not weird. I just love all of their advice, and I invite you to go and check them out. They also made us a discount code, so you can use code SIMPLIFIED to save 20% on the course that they mentioned, which is so helpful. I have watched the entire course. I absolutely love it. I found it really empowering as a mom. As we close out this episode, I would like to say a blessing for you as we leave this time together to get back to our days. As you navigate a season of change, may you be the strong, sure lighthouse guiding the way home for your loved ones. May you offer warmth and protection and a soft place to land. And may you remember the ones who acted as a lighthouse for you, who guided you to become the kind, brilliant, and loving person you are today. As always, I like to leave a little tip to help you put what we've talked about today into practice. So here is your task for this week. One of the things I like about Mary Flo and Megan is how they help parents acknowledge our emotions around these hard topics. But they remind us that everything that's happening with our kids is totally normal. And we can set the tone around how these topics are talked about in our homes. Whenever these topics come up for your kid, I know it can feel a little nerve-wracking because you want to get it right. So when you're feeling nervous, remember that you can use your pediatrician voice, like we talked about earlier, to take some of the emotion out of what you're talking about. You're just making an observation after all, and what you're talking about is completely normal. Giving these topics an air of openness will help kids lean into their curiosity and help solidify your place as an authority on the topic and a safe place where kids can talk about anything. Thank you for listening to the Simplified podcast. I hope today's episode made you feel a little more confident as you help your kids navigate puberty. You can find show notes for this episode at emilylay.com/podcast, where you can check out links and resources mentioned here and shop the beautiful Simplified brand of planners and products. You can also watch my interview with Megan and Mary Flo over on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/simplified by Emily Lay. And if you'd like to listen to the Simplified podcast ad-free and a little bit earlier, then you should check out the premium version of our show on Apple Podcasts. Just search for the Simplified podcast in the search bar and tap on the blue thumbnail image with the pink pineapple. Can't miss it. And don't forget to pick up your copy of You're Always Enough and More Than I Hoped For right now, wherever you buy books. I hope you're loving this show, and I love making it for you. The simplest way you can enjoy it is to subscribe to the show so it'll pop right into your phone without you even having to think about it. Talk about automated. And while you're subscribing, it's easy to rate the show and leave a review while you're there. That helps this show get to other people who might enjoy it also. Thank you so much for doing that. And until next time, thanks for listening. Bye.